Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Richard III, and today we get to hear from Richard again in Act 1, Scene 1. So it's just the start of the play, and we learn that he is physically unattractive and thrives much better in times of war and chaos than he does in his current time of peace. So he's decided he's going to stir things up a little bit and play the villain because ultimately he does want to become king. His brother Edward is currently the king, and his other brother, the Duke of Clarence, whose name is actually George, he's planted the idea in Edward's head that somebody whose name starts with G is going to kill him. So Edward has had George, the Duke of Clarence, carted away and arrested, put in the tower, so that he can't come and murder him, because, you know, that's what you do to thwart a murder plot, is you put the murderer in jail. So yesterday what we had mostly Richard talking to George, the Duke of Clarence, and saying, oh no, everything's fine, I'm sure everything's gonna be fine, whatever, even though he's intentionally setting George and Edward up against each other, hoping that they'll both eventually kill each other. And then he sees Hastings, Lord Hastings, or Lord Chamberlain, who has just been released from prison, and he's like, so what's going on in the world? And Hastings says that the king, King Edward, is like deathly ill and is probably gonna die any second now. So he starts to leave, and Richard says, go you before and I will follow you. And Hastings leaves. He cannot live, I hope, and must not die till George be packed with post-horse up to heaven. I'll in to urge his hatred more to Clarence, with lies well steeled with weighty arguments. And if I fail not in my deep intent, Clarence hath not another day to live, which done, God take King Edward to his mercy, and leave the world for me to bustle in. For then I'll marry Warwick's youngest daughter. What though I killed her husband and her father? The readiest way to make the wench amends is to become her husband and her father, the which will I, not all so much for love, as for another secret close intent, by marrying her, which I must reach into. But yet I run before my horse to market. Clarence still breathes, Edward still lives and reigns. When they are gone, then must I count my gains. And that's the end of Act 1, Scene 1. So what he's saying here is, you know, he tells Hastings to go after Edward, and then he's like, crap, Edward can't die until Clarence is dead. Because if Edward dies, then Clarence becomes king, and Richard is out of luck. So he needs Edward to take it one step further and not just arrest George/Clarence, but put in the order to have him executed for wanting to kill the king. So he's gonna go and talk to Edward and push him a little bit farther, nudge him and make his suspicions grow a little bit more, so that Edward will like sign the death warrant for Clarence, because once both Clarence and Edward are dead, then Richard can become king. And he's like, and I've got other things that I'm going to do once I'm king. I'm going to marry Warwick's youngest daughter, even though I killed her husband and her dad. I'm going to make her fall in love with me because I got stuff to do there. And then he's like, wait a second, hang on, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. First I have to make sure that Clarence dies, and then I have to make sure that Edward dies, and then I can think about getting married. That's the end of Act 1, Scene 1. So, I mean, when he says that he is going to prove himself a villain, he is going to prove himself a villain. And he's going to do his damnedest and have fun with it. So come on back tomorrow as we dig in a little bit further and see what happens with his villainous plots. I'll see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.